Oh, what's this, pray tell? A 10% attack increase? Surely this doesn't hinder my capability to clear. I've got a premium sustain on my side. Clueless.
No.
Around patches 3.1 and 3.2, they increased the enemy's attack in MOC and other endgame content by around 10%, and that alone has ushered in a new era of power creep. There's also the new anomaly arbitration, but I'll talk about that in a separate video. I've already discussed HP bloat in depth in a previous video, so think of this as a continuation of that through the lens of 3.x. Now, some of you may wonder how a mere 10% increase in attack changes the meta. The answer is fairly simple. You'll see a lot more teams getting wiped, and Zero Cycle fans will need to restart their runs more frequently now. And even I myself was surprised at how my teams with premium sustainers actually get wiped once in a while. Chapter 1. Trolling. If there's one thing that the Hoyo devs are good at, it is trolling with math. If you take a look at the total HP of any of the enemy units, you're going to see big, weird, and seemingly random numbers. Like, for example, this enemy has 11,731,702 HP, and most sane developers would just put something like 12 million instead. And the reason for this is quite simple. They choose weird numbers specifically to mess with the player's ability to quickly assess numbers at a glance, and for the situations where the enemies just have the tiniest sliver of health, which I dub as 1% hype moments and aura. In the same way, enemies are fine-tuned to rarely ever one-shot you unless they're using a move that is telegraphed turns beforehand. At most, they'll typically leave you in critical condition to force you to burn SP on sustains. In this case, the enemies themselves are always experiencing the 1% player HP, hype moments, and aura. And with this lens, it now makes sense why that tiny 10% attack increase does some teams in, due to how fine-tuned the enemies are. Though, I will admit that there have been some attack percent increases every now and then in previous versions, but only now has there been a consistent uptick for every single rotation of MOC. This will have many effects on the meta moving forward. Chapter 2. Inflation. In versions 1 through 2, the main heralds of power creep that we saw were just DPS units straight up dealing more damage than the others, and the HP bloat that came with it, which made other units unable to clear within enough cycles. With this wave of attack bloat, however, it means that not only are older team compositions in danger of not being fast enough, but also not being able to clear at all since they die before they can try. But Kyte, doesn't that mean everyone is in danger of dying, regardless of release date? No. With this wave of attack bloat, some units will suffer more than others. The ones comfortably at the top are obviously HP scaling units like Tribi, Hyacin, Caceres, Blade, and Bladie, though those last two might not be too comfortable when it comes to damage output. To add to this, Memo Sprite summons count as an additional body to tank and cover for your team, so Remembrance units in general aren't that affected by this wave of attack inflation. Now, onto the units that suffer. DPS units that scale on attack are squishy. Not only are their base HP and def generally low, but their builds are also typically intensive on main stats and substat rolls so that they can deal damage. In most cases, this isn't really a problem as most teams just run one DPS and the rest of the party can build tanky. Oh, and this is a quick PSA. Please run Tank Cypher, Tingyun, Ceredra, and other similarly squishy units. Though some support units do indeed scale with specific stats, please double check if they're relevant when it comes to damage output. Because in the case where you are running multiple DPS units, such as the Dot team, Fua team, Herta team, or Cypher, you will be disproportionately affected in terms of sustain. Of course, this can be easily solved if you have a premium preservation unit, which leads into my next point. But before that, if you like in-depth analyses like this, please subscribe. I want to hit 1k subs soon. Thank you if you do, and if not, then please enjoy the rest of this video. Preservation units are generally better than abundance units. I covered this topic on a previous video also. I'll only add a couple of points here instead of restating it, so I'll assume you're caught up to speed. Speaking of speed, recent enemies have ridiculously high speed and/or action counts, which makes it hard for abundance units to catch up as they're tied down to the 160 speed S5 multiplication setup and the SP economy. Units that heal you whenever you get hit like Bailu and Hyacine aren't as affected by this, but units that require you to take a turn or attack like Lotcha, Huahua, or Gallagher are. Preservation units, on the other hand, just chill out behind their thick shields and respond at their leisure. This is a huge problem, because if you want to use units with lower base stats and not get one-shot, you're kind of forced to run preservations or sacrifice a significant amount of your relic budget just to survive, which is going to be a huge problem, because if they're already drowning in the waves of attack inflation, they also won't be able to keep up with the HP inflation that's bound to come. On paper, this makes sense if they're intending to keep the bar on sustaining equal amongst all 5-star units, so that it isn't mandatory to pull for Eidolons to just survive. And in that case, sure, the amplifiers are fine. But we can see that's no longer the case. Now, they're angling to increase the damage output of the enemies. They stand to invalidate a sizable chunk of the early cast, as you can't even save them with investment, and because older units typically had lower base HP and def. Chapter 3: Power Creep. There's one clear reason why any of this is happening. It's to make you pull for the units that Hoyoverse wants to shill. I've got no clue why they shill Caceres and Hyacine so much, but the fact that Hyacine increases your team's HP and that Caceres will receive an 85% damage increase with Evernight and Cyrene later means that the rest of the cast will suffer, especially since they don't have Caceres' global passive. Not to mention that the entire Remembrance team has summons too, so there's no way anyone is dying there. Power creep takes many different forms, and although direct power creep is rare in HSR, the waves of HP inflation will check if you have an invested carry or pick the newfangled push character in the current version. And now, with the advent of attack inflation, it will serve to slowly wash away the previous cast and force you to pull for the latest preservation unit, no matter how bad their synergy is with your current carry. Conclusion: I have no clue what the meta will look like in Edo Star, but we all know is that they're bringing back old characters into new forms, there will be a new path, and that there will be 0 or 1 Remembrance characters for the patch. This wave of bloat was brought upon us by Hyacine and the Path of Remembrance, and I believe that Remembrance itself is a can of worms that needs a separate video for me to properly crack open. I feel like I need to restate the fact that they're not looking to make more Remembrance characters, and at most there's going to be 1 in the next version. I've lost trust in Hoyoverse's ability to keep a semblance of balance in their game a long time ago, as they are monetarily incentivized to introduce power creep in the game, so I won't even offer any design tips or have a how to fix segment in this video like I normally do. But as long as I can clear with Silverwolf, Archer, and Herta, that's all that really matters to me. If these trends that I've noted in the video keeps up, this is my advice on the matter. Pull Hyacine or Goated Sustainers, pull for units that increase survivability like Tribi, and of course the obvious and tried and true advice that I've given since the start of the game, vertical invest into a DPS with good Eidolons so that your enemies die before they even get a chance to hit you. Alternatively, you can also pull S15 Dance 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 alongside a crew of E0 action forwarding harmonies. I made this script like 3 weeks ago and they released Dunhung PT and gave him away for free. This will ease the burden of sustaining on one side of everyone's accounts, and it confirms the theory that these free 5-star characters are meant to sow goodwill in people and at the same time, fix balance issues across the board. We saw this with Ratio giving value to debuffers, Harmony MC fixing the horrible break system, and now DHPT to taper up this attack bloat. I had a hunch that recent unit releases were getting tankier and tankier on average, and you could argue that it's because a majority of the units released were Remembrance characters, HP scalers, or were named Phynon. But even if you cast them aside as outliers, the base stats of DPSs and supports have been trending upwards as the game goes on. I consulted with someone on Discord and looked at the EHP and general tankiness of recent units, and my hunch was correct. To be fair, the increase in base stats isn't anything too dramatic, maybe around a 6-7% increase. But conversely, the same 10% enemy attack increase doesn't seem that dramatic either, yet it's enough to drive your endgame runs into the dirt. That's it for me, my name is Kyte and thanks for watching. If you want more on this topic, please watch this video where I talk more in depth about harmonies and HP inflation. See ya, peace.